Sadvitam Saraswatam Parijanasahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Samagana Yurivishakhanditam Dhamma Padaya Krishna Preshaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanande Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatari Namaste Saraswati Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Krishna Shri Krishna Prabhu Shri Advaita Gadadhar Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Parivrajakacharya Ashtottara Shrimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadvip Mayapur Dham ki jai. Ganga Devi Jamuna Devi Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi ki jai. Lord Prem Anand. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga Hari Hari. Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Hiranyakashipur Vakshaha. Shiva Kankanakai. Ito Nisingha Parado Nisingho. Nrisimhamadin Sharanam Prapadye. Nrisimhamadin Sharanam Prapadye. Kamala Pare Alam Adbhuta Sriram Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringa Vishavadita Narahari Rupa Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare.
Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
It's very great to see all of you. Thank you all for coming to the Sunday Feast program. Now we're just getting back into it. So you look around, you see, okay, there's not so many people. People are starting to walk out. Little by little, we'll start to see people coming back. It's been a year and 3 months since people have been away from coming to the Sunday Feast. It's been a year and 3 months since people have been going to work. So everybody, in every aspect of life, most aspects of life, people are a little slow in getting back. So same thing is here with the temple. But we're here. Please help us get the word out that the temple is open. And we are, the full Sunday Feast program is back on. Now, we're a little behind the rest of the world, or at least the Philadelphia region, New Jersey, tri-state area, where most everybody's taking a mask. They've thrown them off. Government says it's okay, but we also know that there's some sensitivities within our community, and we're going to just be a little bit more conservative for a few more weeks. So please bear with us. As soon as we go out and take prasadam, take the mask off, that's fine. But just for a few more weeks, just please bear with us the inconvenience that we have. Now, our schedule is changed a little bit from, if you remember, a year and 3 months ago, not so much. We had a very wonderful kirtan. We're having an arti, led by His Grace Vishnu Prabhu. We're now going to introduce group japa. Then we'll have a class. Then we'll have a final kirtan. And then we will have prasad. So we'll end the program on prasad. Now, this next part of the program, so the kirtan, kirtan will be 6:15 that we'll begin. That'll be the arti. So we'll go for about another hour. Now, this next part of the program, the japa, this is something that new that we're introducing. Really, because we want to bring a strong focus on the holy name. We just did kirtan, which is the chanting of the holy name. We're going to do japa, and many of you have japa bags at home with beads. Bring them with you when we come next time. Right now, we have beads for newcomers as well as those that don't have them. We'll collect them at the end. But it's our goal that when people come here, they've been here for some time, that they'll purchase their own beads, and every day they will take to the practice of chanting Hare Krishna. And there's one other part of how we're going to do this that I want to introduce. Excuse me 1 second, we're getting some feedback here. About a year ago, we were talking about how to make connections better at the Hare Krishna temple. And we said, when we open up again, we're going to start implementing a couple of things. And one way we want to do this is by connecting through prayer. And if we connect through prayer, when we see somebody outside, we may feel a little more comfortable saying, hey, that was nice chanting with you, or you develop a little bit of a bond. There are actually some people that reached out to us and said they didn't actually feel comfortable so much in the temple because no one said hi to them. They sat and they talked amongst each other, but they never said anything to me. So we want to make sure that those things don't happen here at the temple anymore. So we're trying to become a little bit more aware of some of these things. And one thing that we're going to do is while we chant, we're going to form little groups of 3. And try to have, in your group, try to have at least one person that you may not be so familiar with. I'm sure you've seen everybody here before, at least once or twice. But somebody you're not so familiar with. And we're going to chant. At the end, we'll have a few minutes of reflection time. So we're going to chant one round together. I'm not going to give, I see everybody here are all regulars. So we're not going to get into a whole philosophical talk on the chanting of the holy name, as we would if there were a lot of guests. So we can get right into it. But we're going to chant one round together. And so what I'd like to do before we do that, we're going to divide into groups of 3, or it could be 4, but not much bigger than that. And organically, this should kind of come. Like we have the church, we have the people in the seat. They could form a group right there because they're all sitting on seats. And the people on the floor, they could kind of form a group that are sitting on the floor. But again, this is a bonding time around the holy name, and part of our practice that we like to do. I expect the first couple of weeks for this to be a little bit clunky, but after we do this after a couple of weeks, it'll actually become a natural formation. So if the people in the back, if they could just kind of maybe face each other or kind of come together, the people on the floor could kind of come together in a little bit of a group. And then at the end, we're going to have a short reflection period, in which you'll just kind of say a few words of reflection, to each other about the chanting. We're going to begin. Collectively, we'll start with the Panchatattva Maha Mantra. 3 times we'll chant together, and then we'll begin. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So, thank you for participating in this japa session. Now, before I said we're going to chant one round together. I should have actually said we're going to chant for 10 minutes because everybody chants at a different pace. So I hope that was at least one round for you. If not, we're going to move on with the program. Now, before we begin, before we separate a little bit, I want us to take a moment, and the people you were chanting with, exchange some type of greeting. It could be, if you don't know each other's name, maybe it's the first time you've met them, get to know their name. You could say something like, how long have you been chanting for? I've been chanting for this long. We're just going to do this little bit of reflection for about 2 minutes, and then we'll move on with the class. So. Okay. Just finish up maybe another 10 seconds. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So, I hope you had a nice japa session. You got a chance to introduce yourself to a few people, get to know somebody. And if you already knew them, maybe something new about them. Now, for those of you who don't have beads, Mother Jagannath Priya, who is the Mataji, who was nice enough to walk around and give beads to the people that didn't have them. She has a store right outside, and we sell these beads, and they come in a bead bag, so you can carry them around with you and chant with them wherever you go. Highly recommend that if you don't have a set of your own, to get a set, and then you can actually bring them with you when you come to the temple. And not only just when you come to the temple, but every day at your home, or when you go out for a walk, or anywhere else you go, you can carry your beads with you and keep the holy name with you at all times. Now, so we will, at this point, we'll move on to the Bhagavad Gita lesson, part of our program. Hare Krishna. Feel everybody's so far away. I don't know if I should move or I should come up. That's good. Hare Krishna, everyone. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Gopi Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashoktatara Shishimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashoktatara Shishimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Maharaj Ki Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Skoho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Gangamai Yamunamai Ki Bhakti Devi Tulsi Devi Ki Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravanga Pacharane Nirvishesha Srinyavari Paschatya Deshatarine. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So tonight we are studying from the third chapter, text number 27 of the Bhagavad Gita. The third chapter is titled Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga. We're learning how to link ourselves with Krishna through our activities. A very famous verse. Now, we haven't done this for about 15 months either. Chanting and call and response. We'll see if we can remember how to do it. Because over Zoom, you can't do it so well because of the time delay. Please repeat after me, line by line. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimuratma kartaham iti manyate prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha ahankara viruratma Kartahamiti manyate. Pakrite kriyamanani. Gunaya karmani sarvasha. Ahankara vimudatma. Kartahamiti manyate. Please chant. Prakrite kriyamanani. Gunai karmani sarvasha. Ahankara vimudatma. Kartamiti manyate. Prakrite kriyamanani. Sarvasha. Ahankar vimudatma. Kartahamiti manyate. Anyone else? Yes, lady.
Prakrite kriyamanani.
Prakrite kriyamanani.
Gunai karmani sarvasa.
Guna karmani sarvasha.
Ahankara vimudhatma.
Ahankara vimudatma.
Kartaham iti manyate.
Kartahamiti manyate.
Prakrita kriyamanani.
Prakrite kriyamanani.
Gunani kamani sarvasa.
Gunai karmani sarvasha.
Ahankara vumadatma.
Ahankara viduratma.
Kartaham iti manyate.
Kartahamiti manyate. Prakrite kriyamanani. Gunai karmani sarvasha. Ahankara viduratma. Kartahamiti manyate. Okay. Now this part I don't have for you because we're still working with our audiovisual stuff. And if anybody's really interested or is really good at audiovisual stuff, we're looking for somebody to help us out with that during our programs. Just a little advertisement there for service, anybody interested. But we still haven't got this. In the next couple of weeks, we'll get it together. So we have to listen to this part. The synonyms: Prakrite, of material nature. Kriyamanani, being done. Gunai, by the modes. Karmani, activities. Sarvashaha, all kinds of. Ahankara vimudha, bewildered by false ego. Atma, the spirit soul. Karta, doer. Aham, I. Iti, thus. Manyate, he thinks. Translation: the spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. Let's repeat that so we make sure we get it. The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Two persons, one in Krishna consciousness and the other in material consciousness, working on the same level, may appear to be working on the same platform, but there is a wide gulf of difference in their respective positions. The person in material consciousness is convinced by false ego that he is the doer of everything. He does not know that the mechanism of the body is produced by material nature, which works under the supervision of the Supreme Lord. The materialistic person has no knowledge that ultimately he is under the control of Krishna. The person in false ego takes all credit for doing everything independently. And that is the symptom of his nescience. He does not know that this gross and subtle body is the creation of material nature, under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as such, his bodily and mental activities should be engaged in the service of Krishna, in Krishna consciousness. The ignorant man forgets that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is known as Rishikesh, or the master of the senses of the material body. For due to his long misuse of senses in sense gratification, he is factually bewildered by the false ego, which makes him forget his eternal relationship with Krishna. Om Agyanata Brandasha Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umaliyatam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Swapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karamayam Dadati Swapadantika. The translation once again: the spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. So who carries out activities? Modes of material nature. It may be a big shock to hear that we're not the doer. What do you mean I'm not the doer? I got in my car and I did something. I drove here. So this can be confusing, so we're going to talk about it tonight. So earlier on in the Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, Krishna is speaking to Arjuna, and he tells him that he's telling him that the soul is never slain. And he says, he who thinks the soul is slain, or that he is the slayer, is in knowledge. So text number 19. Well, I was paraphrasing, but we'll say, Vishnupada Prabhu, I want to thank you, because I want to make sure I get it right. Neither he who thinks the living entity, the slayer, nor he who thinks it is slain is in knowledge. For the self slays not, nor is slain. So that's the translation. So Krishna from the very beginning is telling Arjuna that you're not the doer. Even if you're going out there and fighting and you're slaying somebody, if you're in knowledge, you wouldn't actually think yourself the killer of somebody. Again, how are we to understand this? Krishna wants us to get us off the level of the material body and onto the spiritual side of who we actually are. Enters the concept of the false ego. Because under the bewilderment of the false ego, we think that we are our bodies. And everything in relationship to the body is mine and belongs to me. When we trace the soul that is eternal and falls into the material world, it's explained it's due to a desire to enjoy separately from Krishna. So the soul is originally pure, made of the same constitutional qualities as Krishna, Sat, Chit, and Nanda. Krishna is unlimited and has unlimited qualities, where the spirit soul is limited and has finite capacity. When the spirit soul, because Krishna has free will, the spirit soul also has a small amount of free will and can utilize that free will to serve Krishna consciously or turn away from Krishna. Now, the nature of spirit is that it is always spirit. It can't become anything other than spirit. So Krishna creates this material world for the purpose to fulfill the desires of the spirit souls that want to enjoy separately from him. Now, the thing is, the soul wants independence. It wants freedom. It wants to enjoy. So in order to experience that, Krishna creates this material world. But what happens when this material world is created? There's rules, there's laws of nature. Krishna explains this in the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says that, text number 14, text number 3, the total material substance called Brahman is the source of birth, and it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the births of all living entities. It should be understood that all species of life are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving father. Aham bija pradapita. Material nature consists of 3 modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the eternal living entity comes in contact with nature, O mighty armed Arjuna, he becomes conditioned by these modes. In the 7th chapter, Krishna explains that there is material nature and spiritual nature. Material nature consists of earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego. And then he says that a higher nature, the spirit soul, is part of the higher nature. In the 15th chapter, Krishna actually says that these spirit souls, they belong to me. Mamayavamsam jiva loke, jiva bhuta sanatana. The spirit, who you are as spirit soul, you are eternal. And you actually have an eternal relationship with me. But due to conditioned life, you're struggling very hard with the mind and the senses. So this is the way it happens. Krishna impregnates this material energy with the spirit souls. And when they come in, they become conditioned by the modes of material nature. under that conditioning, we begin to think in a different way. If you have glasses, and then if you've seen the glasses that transition when you go outside, now all of a sudden your vision is a little different. And imagine if you have different lenses that continue to click, you're seeing differently. Now the spirit soul, under the influence of the false ego, starts to identify with the particular body. As Krishna says, he creates these different species of life, and in each species of life, there's different bodies. And in each different particular body, there's different experiences. Under the veil of illusion of this material world, the spirit soul becomes bewildered. So how is the spirit soul not the doer? Because we learn about material nature. We just heard earth, water, air, fire, mind, intelligence, false ego. And we hear that material nature is dead matter. The material energy is dead matter. Now it's coming, it doesn't have consciousness. It doesn't act on its own. The material world, however, acts under the dictation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, under the authority that he sets in motion. So the material energy facilitates the desires of the spirit soul. So if you've ever, we're going to use an example that if you ever heard of a person who's been under the influence of medicine or drugs, and they act in a way which wouldn't normally be their behavior. Have you heard that? Yeah. Some people may have experienced it. Now, that person, you could say, never make a decision when you're under, never make an important decision if you're under the influence of medication. Sometimes they give you medication, you have to be under supervision. Because now you're under the influence of something that is actually making you act differently than you would naturally act. The modes of material nature are described as goodness, passion, ignorance, sattva, raja, tamagun. These modes or ropes, they bind us to this material world. And they condition us to be able to think in an unnatural way. The mode of goodness is explained. It conditions one to happiness and to knowledge, to be very content, to try to find the finer things, the more peaceful, the simple life. The mode of passion is full of hankerings and desires. It's full of competition. It drives us to be stronger, to be better, to get that car that we always wanted to have or we dreamed of, to have that house that we wanted, and to get a better house, to get a better position, to get up early in the morning, to work out and get big muscles, to be strong, drive. That is the mode of passion, pulling us. Now you may actually reflect as I'm saying this and say, I can understand how these are working maybe in my life. And then the mode of ignorance conditions one to depression, sleep, lethargy, indifference. Doesn't matter anyway. Who cares? It's all going to work out. Somebody else will do it. Why do I have to work so hard? Let the government take care of me. It's all good. Ignorance is bliss, they say. So, in this way, the spirit soul gets conditioned, and these modes of material nature are working. It's not the pure spirit soul that is no longer acting. That pure spirit soul is now acting under the influence of the conditional nature of the material world. I wanted to show it, but I couldn't get it up there, but there's a picture in the Bhagavad Gita that was done of marionettes. You know what the marionette is? It's a doll that's being manipulated by somebody above the stage, and they move the arms, they move the legs. And this is a picture that's shown of the way material nature works. That we have a desire, and material nature pulls us into that desire. And we're told, and we start thinking that, okay, I need this, and I should go over there and do that. And if we don't have a clear direction, clear consciousness, a strong intelligence developed by higher understanding of who we really are, we get thrown from one place to another. We get pulled in different directions. And the spirit soul goes through this cycle of samsara, repeated birth and death, over and over and over again, taking birth in different bodies according to the activities that we did in our previous life, called the law of karma. These are all the beautiful things of this material world that we subject ourselves to by coming here. So the spirit soul is no longer who it really is. It's something completely different. It's completely covered over. So in the same way, so when it acts, it's really not acting as the true spirit soul. It's acting under the influence, under the guidance of this Maya. Srila Prabhupada says that we're the hard struggle for existence, that since time immemorial, the spirit soul, originally pure, has now come in contact with the material energy, is misidentified now himself. So, I want to go over that point. Is that part? And then we'll go on to how to get out of this conditioned life that we're in. But before we move on from there, I just want to see, is there any questions on that particular point about how the material energy is working on us? Any clarification? Okay. A couple years ago, I went to a health fair. I had to go to a part of my job for my insurance, had to get blood tested. And I got my blood tested, and it came back and they said, "Excuse me, sir, are you aware that you have high cholesterol?" And I said, "I don't believe it. What do you mean I have high cholesterol? I'm in my early 30s. Or my mid 30s. I exercise. I eat a vegetarian diet. This can't be true." And they said, "Yeah, it is true." And I said, "Okay, well, what should I do?" And they said, "You should do some research, So I started doing research. And sure enough, right away, I came across this article about this book from a doctor called Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn. And his book was How to Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. And he's a doctor based out of Cleveland. He took patients. He's a heart surgeon. He's head of the Mayo Clinic. He took patients that had multiple stents. He had patients that, couldn't walk from one side of the room to the other without being exhausted. And he says, "I'm going to take these people that can't go through any more surgeries, that basically have nothing left, and I'm going to reverse their heart disease through proper diet. Not even exercise, but just by a plant-based diet over the course of 6 months, I'm going to show not only will it'll stop degenerating, their heart condition will stop degenerating. Not only that, it'll be fixed. And sure enough, clinical studies showed that he was very successful. That due to a plant-based diet in low fat, he was able to reverse heart disease. Many books have been written. Now, this is not a commercial on reversing heart disease. But what it made me think about was that conditions can be reversed. The same thing can happen to the spirit soul. The condition, we came into this material world due to our desire to be away from Krishna. Krishna created this material world as a playground for us to exhibit our independence. We're not being very successful at it. Now, Krishna has also given the path to reverse the condition. Now, Srila Prabhupada talks about this in the purport. This particular verse he's talking about. He says, the ignorant man forgets that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is known as Rishikesh, or the master of the senses of the material body. For due to his long misuse of the senses in sense gratification, he is factually bewildered by the false ego. So there's a path backward. If we're using our senses for sense gratification, for our body, it attaches us more to this material world. But if we use our senses and engage them in the original purpose of who we are as spirit souls, as eternal servants of Krishna, we can actually become free from the influences of material nature. Srila Rupa Goswami writes a verse in this connection in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Sarvopadi vinir mukta tat parat vena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktir uchate. That when you utilize the senses, our body, the same body that is being pulled around by the modes of material nature, full of desires, if we can purify those desires by utilizing the body in service of Krishna. This name Rishikesh, which is used, has been used in the Bhagavad Gita in the 2nd chapter and the 1st chapter, means the master of the senses. So by engaging our senses in the master of the senses, Rupa Goswami says 2 things happen. One is we get off the bodily conception of life. What's one example of, I'm going to get some activity from input from, what is an example of somebody on the bodily conception of life? What's that? They want a bigger car, that's one. How about I'm Indian and you're American? You're black, I'm white. What are some others? I'm woman, you're man. These dualities that are there. How about you're rich and I'm poor? I'm smart. What was it? My child's smart, and your child isn't so smart. My child belongs to me. Any others? So this bodily conception of life, by engaging in this process of devotional service, by engaging our lives in the service of God, we actually become free from the bodily conception of life. The other is that when we engage our senses in the service of Krishna, our senses become purified. So those same senses that had wanted to do things that were contradictory to the eternal nature of the soul, the real welfare of the soul, are now being engaged in those activities that actually liberate from their material condition. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada gives the example that there's two people performing the same activity. And to the surface, it looks the same. They're both wearing a shirt, they're both wearing pants, they're both wearing sneakers, they're both walking down the street, they both have backpacks on, they're both going into the store. But one person is trying to acquire something to increase his, or to satisfy his material desires. Another person understands that he is not his body, that he is a spirit soul, and that he's acting for the pleasure of Krishna. One person has utilized their senses and their body to elevate and lift themselves up. The other person is actually deepening themselves in the cycle of samsara. So this is the process to free ourselves from the material condition of life. Now, I want to, in this closing few minutes, I want to say something about Father's Day in this connection. Krishna being the Supreme Father. Krishna says, I am the seed-giving Father. I impregnate the living entities into this material nature, allowing them to take birth. We're all connected. Krishna is our Supreme Father. Now, fathers play a very important role in life. However, and this is a day to give gratitude and pay homage to your father for the experiences that your father has given you, for the help they've given you, the teaching and education that they've given you, the guidance they've given you. So, happy Father's Day to all the fathers. But not always does everyone have a great experience with their father. In fact, some people have a very traumatic experience with their father. Actually, in the scriptures, we find some of the most exalted devotees had some traumatic experiences with their father. Well, Prahlad is one. Another could be Dhruva Maharaj left home because he, it wasn't a good situation. He had to get off his father's lap, not by his father's desire, but due to jealousy within the family. But even if our father abandons us, isn't there for us, may have treated us harshly, we should know that the Supreme Father, Lord Krishna, never abandons us. He loves us so much that he's willing to fulfill our desires, to allow us to exhibit our free will. He's created this material world, which, yes, has the allurement of sense gratification, and as we just explained, it winds up in cycle of samsara, repeated birth and death, misery comes. But he provides us with this world, but he never loses contact with us because he stays with us as the Paramatma, and he travels from body to body, accompanying the spirit soul. Now, he also creates this world, which is, the opportunities are limited and they will ultimately come to an end, but he also provides us with a sense of frustration. You know, and the good thing about frustration is that it actually provides profound insights. Lets us to contemplate the higher purposes of life. That maybe this isn't the place for me. And when the spirit soul starts to think, you know what, I'm frustrated. Maybe this isn't the place for me. Maybe there's something higher than this. The Paramatma, Krishna, is right there, not abandoning us at any time, ready to encourage us and take us back on the journey, back home, reversing our material condition to our original spiritual condition. Krishna loves us so much that despite our desire to turn away from him, he has always remained in connection with us. This is Krishna's supreme compassion. And as we're all sitting here, getting this knowledge and understanding of the Bhagavad Gita, we've read the Bhagavad Gita, we receive the mercy of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's holy names, association of devotee, Krishna prasadam, the ability to perform devotional service. This is all by Krishna's grace. Krishna sends his devotees to help us free ourselves from this condition of material existence. So on this day, we should give praise to Krishna, the Supreme Father, for his kindness upon us. We should give praise to our spiritual father, Srila Prabhupada, and our spiritual masters for their care and compassion upon us, for their tireless sacrifice that helped us come to the point, that freed us from our ignorance, at least given us the pathway and the understanding how to free us from ignorance. But it doesn't stop there. 2 verses before the verse that we studied today, Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport that, we'll end on this. I'm sorry, I can't find it. But I'm going to paraphrase to this extent. He's saying that it is our duty, those that have received this knowledge, this understanding, it is our duty to teach those that are still unaware of how this material world works, of how the soul is conditioned, to share this with them. This is how we can repay Krishna for his kindness, the spiritual master for their kindness. They've given the guarantee they will never leave us. We can give them thanks by taking this transcendental knowledge, the holy names of Krishna, the mercy of Krishna, Krishna prasadam, and take it out into the world and bring them back to the pathway of Krishna consciousness. So, we have a few more minutes. We'll stop here before Artik. We'll stop and ask for any comments, questions, thoughts, reflections. Vishnu Gada Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Living entity of the slayer, then according to the Bhagavad Gita, should anybody be convicted of a crime?
So just like if you're under the influence of drugs and you do something, you can't say, well, it wasn't me, it was just the drugs acting, so arrest the drugs. So, right, you're not the slayer, nor he who thinks yourself a slayer. So they're not. Would you like to elaborate on the point? Right. No. So the same point is that we're under the influence of the false ego, one may think himself the slayer. In this particular verse, Arjuna was thinking himself the slayer. So that influence, Krishna is telling him that you can act according to false ego and you'll be lost. Or you can act, so Arjuna was trying to, of course, avoid fighting. So in doing so, he was identifying himself as the doer. I'm either going to fight and I'm going to kill somebody and I'll get the sinful reactions, or I'm not going to fight and I won't be killing somebody and I'll free myself from the sinful reactions. But Arjuna was under the influence of false ego. He wasn't thinking himself as the spirit soul. What does God want me to do? How should I act? So, in Arjuna thinking himself the slayer, he was in ignorance. Is that okay, Vishnupada Prabhu? Acharya Prabhu?
Not being the doer doesn't mean that the jiva has no agency, no desire, no influence in the bodily activities. It just means that he's not the direct actor. So responsibility is still there to some degree.
Yes. So in the 18th chapter, Krishna describes that there's 5 agents of action. The place of action, the body, the various senses, the many kinds of endeavor or desires, and ultimately the super soul are the 5 factors of action. So the soul desires, has some desire, but they're under so many different influences are there. Ultimately, everything is under the jurisdiction and being carried out by the supreme will of the Lord. So the doer, so we have a role in it in the sense that we are desiring. Those desires are become influenced by the modes of material nature and their various associations. They're carried out by material nature in the form of our senses and the byproducts of the senses, and the different aspects of the material energy. Like, elaborate on that any further? Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah. So we have free will. We want to utilize our free will in order to serve Krishna, who we're eternally and originally and always connected to. This material concept of life is an illusion. We can free ourselves from that illusion by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, performing devotional service, engaging in association with devotees, taking Krishna prasadam instead of ordinary food, reading the transcendental literatures, such as Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, freeing ourselves from the modes of material nature, liberating the spirit soul back home, back to Godhead. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. Okay, so the next part of our program, we're going to begin Kirtan, and after Kirtan, we will have Prasad. Hare Krishna.